All right, good morning, all. You're listening to Alan Plasick, Program Coordinator for the Workforce Division. And alongside me is Juan Cruz, Program Coordinator and Liaison for the Workforce Division. You have joined the webinar for the 2019-2020 CDGA RFP for Workforce Services. All attendees, if you could just let us know that you're coming in loud and clear by indicating yes, maybe keying in yes, and then we'll know who all is here. Okay, we're going to move right along. Just wanted to point out CDGA stands for Community Development Grant Application, for those that don't know. If you have attended the TA session at Malcolm X College on April 11th, we will cover pretty much the same material today. We have, however, added a few slides with additional resources and tips for you. But everybody is certainly welcome to attend this webinar. As I said, my name is Alan Plasick, and we'll be hearing from Juan shortly. Please feel free to add any questions as we go along, or if we need to clarify something that's a little confusing, please make a comment about that, and we will definitely respond to your questions at the conclusion of this webinar. And there's also a slide later on in the presentation that there's a bullet point that addresses Q&A. I believe that on May 10th, we'll be addressing some additional questions, and that's going to be through eProcurement. Okay, so let's get started. Here we are again. 2 years have come and gone already, and we're talking about the next 2-year cycle. We want to make sure everybody is clear at this juncture. You will be applying for a 2-year contract funded with CDGA dollars, Community Development Block Grant. And this is a fair and competitive process. Once you receive your award, if all goes well in 2019 and the funding is there, you will be renewed for year 2 in 2020. Okay, I'm going to go over our 5 program models shortly, and I did say 5 program models, and they're all separate RFPs. And I'll talk about the requirements and the target populations and what we're looking for regarding performance and meeting performance goals, and how you are selected. But I just want to interject a little side note. Some of our delegate agencies participated in focus groups this past year, led by the Chicago Jobs Council. Some of the feedback from the focus groups helped DFSS look at ways to improve our program models, identify best practices, and how we could implement positive change in the way that we look at how agencies operate. So we thank those agencies and CJC for your participation and input. Okay, we're going to get started. I'm going to flip over to the agenda. And as you can see, we have our introduction, and Juan will be addressing, let's see, 2, 3, 4, and 5. He will be addressing the strategic framework and some of the changes and differences in this particular RFP. Then I will be working on the workforce program models, and it looks like we have 2 number 5s, so I apologize for that. And then we're going to talk about some valuable links to resources and various application tips. So without further ado, I am going to turn it over to Juan, and he'll address the division as a whole.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this webinar. Just first, a little housekeeping. We are the Department of Family and Support Services. As you know, the Department of Family and Support Services is one of the city's largest social service providers. We have 8 divisions, and we served over 300,000 individuals with about a $300 million budget. In some of our divisions are Children's Services, which handle early childhood development, and Head Start. We have our Youth Services with One Summer Chicago, and if you guys have not begun registering kids, please do so. They have over 100,000 opportunities for youth to get employed. We have our domestic violence hotline. We have our veteran services, workforce services, which is Alan and myself. We have our homeless divisions where we have shelter beds and interim housing. We have our senior services, and we have our human service delivery division, which handles 6 community service centers, which are, they serve as, which we probably would need coming up shortly, as our cooling centers. And then in this winter, we have them as our warming centers. So we're going to talk, before we get into the services that we're looking to purchase, we're going to talk about DFSS and our new structure and our priorities. And this comes by way of our strategic framework. In 2016, DFSS launched the strategic framework with a refreshed mission and the department-wide priorities. So we went from the bottom down instead of the top up. So we looked at our current mission statement, and we found out that it was very long. Nobody could remember it. And of course, if you can't remember what mission, with your own mission statement, how do you know if you're on target? So we started with that. And so now our mission is concise, and it's in line with our priorities. So with our mission, we work with community partners, and we connect Chicago residents and families to resources that build stability, support their well-being, and empowers them to thrive. And some of our priorities we looked at is like, we like to deliver services, high-quality services from delegate agencies like yourself. We like to collaborate with community partners and sister agencies and other public officials on programs and policies that improve Chicagoans' lives and advance systematic change. And the strategic framework was a way to do that as well. We like to inform the public of resources that's available. That's why we're doing the webinar. And we like to be good stewards of resources. So with that effort, when we changed with the strategic framework, we started with all our divisions. And with that effort, we started working to translate the strategic framework into results-focused RFPs and contracts. So we just didn't want to rubber stamp RFPs that came out year after year. So we really had an opportunity to take a deep dive and examine just our processes and see were we delivering the right services to get the outputs that we were looking to do. And so phase 1 of that, which began back in 2016, was the development of the strategic framework. So that was from July 2016 to November 2017. And we started with setting and operationalizing priorities and outcome goals internally. So we even looked at our program models and really looked around the country and see where we're in line with our performance-based contracting, where our outcomes on target, and what we found out that we were capturing all information, but we were measuring it differently. So one of the things we did was we wanted to look at how do we measure, what we were reporting on, and refreshing our goals. Another bullet we said we were going into data-driven decisions that align funding and programs with priorities. We wanted to cultivate opportunities for greater collaboration across DFSS. And then from November 2017 to December 18, we started engaging delegates to improve services and outcomes in line with phase 1. So as Alan mentioned, we had focus groups. And so who better to talk to about services than the people that had, the boots on the ground, community partners like yourself that's looking to apply for one of our grants. And so from that, we conducted, more robust planning for our RFPs. We developed RFPs and contracts that focused on outcomes instead of outputs. And we are now actively managing contracts to drive continuous improvement. Next, we made changes to our RFPs, and what you will see is in our selection criteria was modified, and the subsequent application questions that align with those criterion questions have changed for the CDGA cycle. So you can't just copy and paste anything. You have to really look at the questions. The questions are more condensed, and concise, and it aligns with our goals this year. So we want to use the RFP. So we wanted to use this RFP and contract as a critical tool for critical tools to ensure that outcomes continue to be at the center of our work. We want to develop a shared understanding of priorities for how we track improvements. We want to support a two-way communication between DFSS and delegates about best practices, high-quality services, and the needs of those we serve. We've also adjusted the structure and content of our RFPs and application questions to shift focuses from activities to goals. We've aligned DFSS's priorities with selection criteria and application questions, and we've posed questions that provide the most relevant information for decision making. And we think, so now so now DFS RFPs articulate what we want to achieve together with Chicagoans, with you guys, rather than focus on activities alone, just on how many people we enrolled through our programs. We wanted to move away from just outputs and then more into outcomes of just how they're moving through that continuum of care, the sustainability, the supportive services after you get placed. So we want to dive deeper into that. So our outcomes now, which reflect what we are trying to achieve with this RFP. Our target population goes with who we want to achieve it for, the context, which conveys where we are today and priorities for future programs. And then our program requirements now defines the most important programmatic activities agencies should undertake. Our performance measures look at how we will measure success and progress against outcome goals, and work together to improve our whole system. So again, you have to pay attention to the selection criteria and our application questions because they have changed. So okay, let's say this is where the rubber meets the road. DFSS has developed and updated versions of selection criteria that reflect our focus on results and best practices. Some of the key changes you see here are new category names and point values that reflect DFSS's priorities. It's an emphasis on key concepts in human services, like understanding target populations, using data to improve services, and building capacity to deliver. Another key change is we closely tie selection criteria to application questions to provide greater clarity on how we assess applications. So the new selection criteria categories, it was more categories, and we condensed them into 4, and those categories are strength of the proposal. With the strength of proposal, we want to look at application, the applicant proposes, what the applicant proposes to deliver. 2, we have programmatic performance, outcomes, and quality. 3, we have organizational capacity, what the applicant has, the capacity to run the program. And 4, we have reasonable costs and budget justifications and leverage of funds. So those of you who have applied in the past, you can see that some of those have got condensed into 1 category instead of 3 different categories. So some of them have got wrapped up all into 1 category, which again, for space on character restrictions, you can answer these. I think it was a 4,000 character limitation. So now you should be able to really answer those questions very nicely. Finally, the new application questions aim to solicit strong responses. We want the best response possible. It's a competitive process to help DFSA, to help us make more informed decisions. And some of those key changes: develop more specific questions to tailor to human services content. We added questions to reflect DFSS focus on evidence-based practices and using data to improve. And some of the other key changes are a larger number of questions, but broken out to help applicants provide focused, concise responses that meet the 4,000 character limits text field in the eProcurement system. So some of the example questions are, what are the challenges and criteria needs facing your intended client population? It has described the evidence-based and/or best practices that support the proposed program. And finally, please tell us about 1 or 2 times your agency's made a programmatic or organizational change based on data criteria, data collection. So again, before I pass it over to Alan, just be cognizant of some of these changes. We're doing, all we can to get that out. You can't just copy it. Definitely look at the questions, answer them accordingly. And now I'm going to turn it over to Alan, who will be discussing our program models.
Thank you, Mr. Cruz. Okay, I'm back with you again, and just want to let you know that, as I said earlier, we will be addressing various questions at the end. However, some of the questions may be answered as we go along from slide to slide. But I do want to say that, yes, the presentation will be available in the future, so this session is being recorded, and the PowerPoint slides will also be available. So we'll make sure that you are aware how to go about doing that. Okay, I want to start with our 5 program models, and I say 5 because we previously had 4 and we have a new one. So let me start with the first bullet point, employment preparation placement. Next one is industry-specific training and placement. Next one is transitional jobs program and community reentry support centers. And finally, the new program model is called Community Construction Training Program. As we move along in our slides, I'm not going to read every single thing word for word, but I'm going to give you the highlights and the key points of each program model. And then let me just point out, in many instances, a lot of the criteria will be the same for each program model, maybe a few exceptions or a few differences in reentry. But if you're on page 11, if you can go to the 3rd paragraph, this is what I was referring to as far as the criteria for all of the programs, as far as eligible participants. So individuals must be unemployed or underemployed, low income, and have limited work skills. These are the high-need individuals that we refer to frequently. And DFSS prioritizes individuals who are part of the following 3 groups with additional barriers to employment. Returning citizens that have justice-involved backgrounds, sometimes known as ex-offenders, persons who are homeless, and persons with limited English proficiency. So these are common for the majority of our program models. So let me just summarize by saying that the employment preparation and placement program is pretty much our job readiness training program. So how you go about preparing an individual to get employment skills, additional skills, and you provide job placement assistance. But we also now are going to take a look at the supportive services and longer-term follow-up that may be necessary to achieve sustained employment. So this, in summary, is the employment preparation and placement program. And this is the one program model that the majority of our agencies, the majority of contracts have this program model. So let's move along to the next one, which is industry-specific. And this particular program model is exactly what it says, industry-specific training. And you'll see in paragraph 3 that these are the industry sectors that we prioritize, and we're hopeful that respondents will address one of these particular areas. Hospitality, as you can see, it includes tourism, retail, culinary, arts training. Healthcare, very popular, a lot of job opportunities in healthcare. TDL, transportation, distribution, and logistics, a lot of opportunities in that particular area. And manufacturing, once again, lots of opportunities. People are retiring through attrition. There are vacancies, so this is a key area for training. and then IT, information technology. So basically, in a summary, specific training, and then placement activities. And also, I might add, a job readiness component is also part of this particular program model. Okay, let's move along to transitional jobs. And the key point of transitional jobs program is the subsidized wages component. Generally, our program models are broken up into two buckets as far as payment, enrollments, and placements. But in the TJ program, we have a subsidized bucket where agencies, as you can see at the bottom, agencies are required to use a minimum of 30% of the contract for wages, subsidized wages. So basically what that means is we hope that you can get an employer, engage an employer to take on what I like to call is like a paid internship. So an individual goes through your training and job readiness preparation, and they are paid a wage once the employer says, yes, I will take them on in a time-limited capacity. Hopefully, that individual has done a nice job and the employer says, I like this person and I want to keep them on board, and we will now take over paying their wage. So that's where we come up with the subsidized wages for that particular program model. And then we would then pay for or you can then be reimbursed for the employment, or excuse me, the enrollment and the placement. Also, I want to point out that in some cases, the employer may not feel very, confident in this particular subsidized person. So that individual, and the employer does not have to hire that person. So the individual now maybe can try to land a job with another employer, with your assistance, of course. But at least they have now something to put on their resume. They've got some skills. They are hopefully more marketable, and potentially another employer may take them on. So that's the TJ program in summary. So I want to move on now to the next program model, which is our Reentry Support Center. Pretty much this is like a clearinghouse or a hotline number where individuals, returning citizens, when they come out of incarceration, they are looking for a variety of supports, and they're not sure where to go. So the hotline number is where an individual can call, and hopefully they will be referred to the appropriate service that they need. Many individuals, of course, are looking for a job. Many of them are looking for a state ID. Many of them are looking for assistance with a roof over their head. So pretty much the Community Reentry Support Center follows this model where they will refer an individual to the appropriate service that they need. So it's making connections. Is there anything else about that particular model, Juan, that we want to plug in?
Yeah, I'd just like to add that we just like to have them located geographically throughout the Chicagoland area, much concentrated in areas where we see a large volume of people that have criminal records or some justice involvement. I think that's just something to note too. So we don't want to stack them in just one community. We want to have it geographically located throughout the Chicagoland area.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, I want to talk about our newest program model right now, which is the Community Construction Training Program. Before I go through some of the highlights of this program description, I wanted to read you an excerpt from the actual RFP. And by the way, there we will show you a link where you can get the full document. It's a 216-page RFP, which includes workforce and all the other programs and other departments that are issuing RFPs. But I wanted to read this excerpt from that document that sets the tone for this particular program model. DFSS has partnered with the Chicago Department of Aviation to support their job training program and needs. On February 28, 2018, Mayor Rahm Emanuel introduced a historic plan called the O'Hare 21 program between the City of Chicago and its airline partners that will create tens of thousands of jobs and transform O'Hare International Airport with the biggest terminal expansion ever, adding 25% more gate capacity, modernizing existing terminals, and improving passengers' experience. This project will create 60,000 construction jobs through 2016 and ensures one of the city's economic engines is positioned to drive significant growth for the region in the years and decades to come. Through this plan outlined in the agreement, passengers traveling through O'Hare will enjoy better customer service, fewer delays, more choices for travel, and a seamless journey to their destination. The Department of Aviation intends to leverage services through this RFP to create a pipeline for construction workers at both Midway and O'Hare airports. So, in summary, I wanted to let you know that this goes through 2026, this initiative that the mayor has introduced. And so as you can see in the program description, this is definitely a partnership with the Department of Aviation. So the funds for this particular program will be coming from aviation dollars. And it is definitely construction related. So positions in the trades, the construction trades is what this particular program is looking for. So if you have a program that is training individuals in the trades, this is the program that you might want to consider applying for. And as I said, we hope to create a pipeline of qualified individuals that have the skills that are needed for these construction-related jobs at the airport. So, that's a summary of our program models. As I said, if there are any confusing areas or questions that you might have, jot those down and we will address those shortly. So we're going to now move on to some of the other slides, and wanted to point out that in addition to us answering some of your questions today, maybe you're not sure of what the question is and you won't know your question until you start the process. We're going to have a formal Q&A that will be through eProcurement, and that is scheduled for May 10th. We'll have more details on that and how to participate in that in short order, but I don't have the specifics yet. And then the key bullet point, applications for any of these 5 RFPs are due on May 31st, 2018 at 12 noon. So this is all electronic and through eProcurement. So you have from now until the end of May to brush up on your proposal and get those in by the deadline. Okay, we have a wide assortment of very valuable links to some information that will help you through this whole process and various technical assistance. As I mentioned earlier, the big book, the 216-page CDGA RFP could be accessed by that first link. And the workforce section is page 81 through 105. Now, you certainly, I would advise you to read as much of the document as possible, especially the early pages that talk about eligibility and sets the overall tone for the RFPs. But the specific workforce sections, 81 to 105, and that will give you all the information about the questions that you'll be responding to, as well as the selection criteria that we, our evaluators, will be using when we read the proposals. And as you can see, there's other support links for you. Take note of the one that's eProcurement Technical Assistance, OBM GMU at cityofchicago.org. So that's a key page with a variety of things. Also, some of these links that we're providing, they may duplicate something that you've already seen, but this particular link here will be to the frequently asked questions. So if we've missed some of the questions here or on that May 10th day, here's a handy, I believe it's a 2-page document that answers some of the more popular frequently asked questions. And then, as you can see, the slides for this presentations are at this link right here. Actually, this link goes to the slides from our TA session that was held last week, I believe April 11th at Malcolm X. So we're going to have to provide you with another link to this presentation.
No, actually, this is Julia Talbot. This particular link goes to the DFSS CDGA webpage, on which you will find everything you need to know about CDGA and DFSS. I suggest you go there if you're looking for anything. It has links to pretty much everything that Alan just showed in the previous slide. It will show it shows the webinars. This webinar will be posted there. Any FAQs. The FAQs will also be posted to the, we're thinking that the FAQs will be posted to the actual eProcurement RFP applications as an attachment, so you will have those FAQs will be accessible to you as part of your application packet, although they obviously aren't something that you need to respond to directly. It also has information and links to all of the TA information on how to manipulate or work within the eProcurement environment, and any other information that we think is useful. The DFSS CDGA information, that web page has information for the workforce programs, but all homeless programs as well.
Great, great. Thanks, Julia. Beautiful. All right. Okay, let's flip over to the next slide, and here's some very key information. Everybody needs to be registered. Now, existing delegate agencies who have contracts currently with us, obviously you're already registered, but new folks who have not been vouchering the city and have not created a login will have to register in order to respond to this RFP. So this is very key, very important, and as you can see, there's a wealth of information at the iSupplier vendor portal. So here you go, there's the link for that. Okay, we're moving on to the next slide. Julia, do you want to address any of these items? We've got some application tips, and we have tips for working in eProcurement.
I would love to. Thank you.
Great, great, thanks.
This is tips for working in eProcurement. These were taken from the OVM TA session on April 11th. We kind of went for highlights. One is in prior applications, this may or may not apply to you. eProcurement is a new system. In prior applications, applicants were not able to submit multiple applications within a single RFP, but this glitch has been fixed. You should be able to, if you wish to apply for 2 different sites, but for the same program model, you should be able to do that using one email address. If you cannot, or you're having problems, give me a call or give Alan a call, or even better, use the procurement hotline, the eProcurement hotline at 312-744-0358. As Juan mentioned earlier, there is a 4,000 character limit, which includes punctuation spaces for all of the text responses, which make up the bulk of our application. One nice feature of the new eProcurement system is that you can submit your application and then amend it. You can then pull it back, and you can keep doing it and add to it, but you can submit it, and it will be there. And you can do this until the application closes on May 31st at 12 noon. This also, because this is a new system, we're suggesting, strongly encouraging people to avoid the rush and any kind of possible mishaps or upload, download failures or whatever by submitting early. I would say, that application is due May 31st, 12 noon. If I were you, I would start trying to submit, try to submit a day early just in case so that you're safe. This is a new system, and we're expecting a lot of applications, and we don't know how the system will handle those applications. And so to the degree that you can, you know, plan for that. That will be helpful. As always, late applications will not be accepted. As I explained in the TA session on the 11th, to accept a late application in this system, we would have to actually reissue the entire RFP, and that would mean every person who had submitted on time would be required to reapply. So when we say no to late applications, it's not personal. It's really that to resubmit, to ask, you know, say we have a pool and it's not unlikely that 80 people applied on time and one person didn't, that, you know, that's not really quite unfair. Unless, so late applications will not be accepted for a variety of reasons, but really because it would require every single other person who had made it on time to resubmit, and that is just not fair. And now we're telling you actually submit early, just in case. I would say if you're having technical problems, make use of the eProcurement hotline at 312-744-0358. And I was seeing, as I was talking about all this stuff, that there was a question about each response has a 4,000 limit. It's 4,000 characters is the limit. So, you know, the word they has 4 letters. That would be 4 characters. If you have they and a space, it will be, you know, 4 letters, and the space counts as a character as well, as does any kind of punctuation. In terms of applications, more application types, as Alan suggested, register into iSupplier, use eProcurement as soon as possible. You can't, you know, it will take a few days for you to get your login into the system, and you don't want to, you know, to miss out on valuable time that you could be spending working on the actual application and learning the system. So yeah, register early. As also was discussed, we highly encourage you to review the RFP narratives and application questions closely. They'll look differently this year, and we want you to be well prepared to respond. Application questions, we reformatted lots of them in response to the fact that we know there's this 4,000 character limitation. So we really tried to design application questions that we thought could be successfully answered within that, you know, keeping that limitation in mind. I would also suggest that you carefully review the selection criteria. So when we build an RFP, we build the scope in narrative section. From the narrative flows the evaluation criteria or the selection criteria, and from the scope and the selection criteria flow the application questions. They're all tied together. And in doing your responses, you know, keep that in mind. Respond as specifically as you can to those individual questions, and discuss how your organization, your proposed program really, you know, really fulfills the selection criteria, fulfills the, you know, you have the capability to do the work that we're asking of the program model. And then, as always, use spell check, and if there's a grammar check, use that too. I've been amused over the years at misspellings, both my own, but also others. So, you know, you can't start too early, you can't check your spelling too often.
Okay. Very good. Thank you, Julia.
Oh, thank you, Alan.
Great tips, great information. The slide you're looking at now is the contact information for Juan and myself. So we are the main 2 contacts for workforce services. Also, you'll find our contact information in the actual RFP at the end of each program description. So you could address any of the questions about the program model to either Juan or myself, but you will also see our names listed after the program description. And also, we'll have some information about how many previous contracts were awarded in a particular program model and the range of awards for that particular program model. So once again, we start with a certain amount that we receive from HUD, and after reading all the proposals, and doing the evaluations, then we make recommendations. We, meaning our evaluation team, makes recommendations to our finance folks and the executive committee. So that's our contact information, and as I said, we will be doing a Q&A coming up May 10th. So without further ado, thank you very much for your attendance in this webinar. We're not going to forget you. We're going to address some of the questions that were typed in along the way, and let's get started with that. First question, and we have a panel of experts here, so the first question is, what is the best way to learn how to submit through eProcurement system?
I would suggest that the best way to learn how to submit to the eProcurement system is to look at the directions that are available through OBM's website. I would go to the DFSS CDGA website, which can be accessed through the DFSS website off of the City of Chicago. Go to alerts and it will say CDGA. Through there's specifically identified areas where you can go to get TA. I personally think that the instructions included in the OBM's webinar presentation on April 11th gave some really good baseline instructions on how to access and manipulate the eProcurement system. You can also email people at OBM. There's the eProcurement hotline, and then there's the eProcurement email address. If you email me, and I believe my email is all over that website as well, I can send you that PowerPoint if you can't find it. But I would say there's some pretty good webinar technical assistance PowerPoint kind of documents that should be able to get you started. And then you can call the OBM hotline for more specific advice.
Okay. I just want to mention that for those of you who want to type in a question, if you see the orange box with the arrow in it on the right-hand side of your screen, if you click on that, you should be able to open up a panel where you could then type in questions. Okay. If we apply for community construction training, can you advise on what the award amounts will be?
Yeah, so the award amounts, right now we are running a pilot, and so it's between $50,000 to $100,000. So per agency, but again, it depends on the type of program that you are operating and just the cost of, getting people prepared. But the low is 50, the high is 100,000.
Okay, we already addressed the question about the 4,000 characters. Just wanted to point out that we had a question or a comment that you couldn't open up the links on the screen. Yes, we'll provide a copy of the PowerPoint, and usually when you click on the link, you'll have to do Control and click at the same time to get right to that particular link. Okay, next question. Is there a way to find out which organizations received these awards in the last round of funding for research purposes? Sure. Sure.
That's public information. I think that you can go through the last budget book for 2017, and there's usually a list you can figure out who got what for CDGA. You can also go to the city's vendor website and search by different program funding streams. That would be, I think, the easiest way to get to.
Yeah, Kaylee asked that question. Kaylee, I would say shoot me an email, and I will then send you a list of our current delegate agencies. It won't have the amounts on that list, but it'll have all the agencies, what program model they have, and well, who they are and what contact information they have provided. So I'd be happy to send that to you. Okay, next question. Is the community construction grant being judged by the same group as the other workforce grants, or does the Department of Aviation have additional judges? Well, I'll just briefly say our evaluation team includes internal DFSS staff, as well as some external partners. As far as Department of Aviation, we need to pursue that a little further. I know Juan has been our main liaison with aviation, so I don't know if there's additional aviation folks who will be doing the reading and evaluations. I'm looking to see if there are any additional questions. Well, as of right now, I think we addressed all the questions that were entered. If you do come up with any other questions, feel free to shoot that information to Juan or myself, and we will be, sending out additional information as we receive it. If there are no further questions, we thank you once again for your attendance and participation. Get started on those proposals and get them in, and we wish you well on your proposals, and hopefully we'll be talking again in the near future. Thanks again. Have a great day.